My name is Rose, I'm 18 years old, and this story begins on a day that I will never forget. You'd think turning 18 would mean freedom, a chance to finally step into adulthood on my own terms. But instead, it turned into one of the most painful and eye-opening moments of my life. It was a Saturday morning, the air outside still carrying that late summer warmth that makes you think life should feel lighter. My dad had told me we were going to the train station because he wanted me to see some of the world before college. I didn't question it much, even though lately things between us had been tense. Ever since he married his new wife, Laura, our relationship had been shifting. She had this way of making me feel like an outsider in my own home. My dad, who used to be my safe place, now seemed to lean on her opinions more than my feelings. We pulled into the station, the car rumbling into the drop-off lane. I noticed Dad wouldn't look at me as he parked. His jaw was tight, and his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I thought maybe it was just stress. But then he turned to me, his voice low and strangely cold. "You can either get in the car with me and Laura and come live the life we're building," he said, "or you can stay here. But if you stay here, Rose, you're on your own." I blinked at him, not sure if I'd heard right. "Dad, what are you talking about? I don't want to live with her. I just want things to go back to the way they were, just us." His eyes hardened. "That's not an option anymore." When I shook my head, clutching the strap of my bag, his hand moved to the gearshift. Without another word, he shifted into drive and pulled away, leaving me standing there with my duffel bag at my feet. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the empty space where the car had been, waiting for him to come back. My chest was tight, my throat burning. But he didn't come back. Not then. Tears started spilling down my face before I even realized I was crying. People passed by, glancing at me but saying nothing. I felt invisible, abandoned in a way I'd never experienced before. And then, out of nowhere, a woman's voice broke through my sobs. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" I turned and saw her, a woman in her late 30s, with kind eyes that mirrored something familiar. "My name's Rose," I whispered. Her expression changed instantly. She froze, like the name had unlocked a memory. Then she knelt down, her hand trembling as she brushed a tear from my cheek. "I'm your aunt," she said softly. "Your father's sister." I stared at her, my tears slowing as I tried to process what she had just said. "Aunt? My father's sister?" That didn't make sense. My dad had always told me he was an only child, that he never had family nearby. For years, I'd believed it was just us against the world. "You're lying," I muttered, my voice shaky. The woman shook her head gently. "No, Rose. I wish I were. I'm your father's older sister. My name is Evelyn." Evelyn. The name struck something faint in my memory, like hearing a song you know but can't place. I remembered once, years ago, overhearing my grandma mention someone named Evie before my dad quickly changed the subject. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. "Why haven't I ever met you?" I asked, clutching the strap of my bag like it was the only thing anchoring me. Her eyes softened with a sadness I didn't understand. "Because your father didn't want me around. There are things he never told you. But you don't need to worry about that now. Come with me. You shouldn't be out here alone." Every part of me screamed to be careful. My father might have been cold, but he had drilled into me not to trust strangers. Yet, staring into Evelyn's eyes, I didn't see a stranger. I saw something familiar, something warm, something I hadn't felt in years. "Do you have proof?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. She pulled out her wallet and handed me a faded photograph. My breath caught. It was my father, young, maybe 19, with his arm around Evelyn, both of them laughing. His face was the same, though softer, freer. I felt my chest tighten. This was real. She wasn't lying. Before I could even think of what to say, Evelyn reached for my bag. Come on. You'll stay with me for now. You don't need to be afraid. I hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. I didn't have much of a choice. My dad had abandoned me, and this woman, the aunt I never knew existed, was the only hand reaching out. As we walked out of the station together, I kept glancing at her, searching for traces of my father in her face. The longer I looked, the clearer it became. She had his eyes. I didn't know where this was going, but for the first time in hours, I didn't feel completely alone. What I didn't realize then was that Evelyn had been waiting for this moment for years. And that my father's secrets were about to come crashing down around him. The ride to Evelyn's house felt like stepping into a dream I wasn't sure I wanted to wake from. She drove a small, older sedan, the kind that smelled faintly of vanilla air freshener and dog hair. I sat quietly in the passenger seat, clutching my bag in my lap, my mind spinning. You must have a lot of questions, Evelyn finally said, her voice calm but steady. I nodded, staring out the window as the city blurred past. Yeah. I guess I don't even know where to start. Why did Dad never tell me about you? Evelyn let out a long breath. Because I knew too much about him. And he didn't want you to know the truth. That answer made my stomach twist. The truth about what? She glanced at me, then back at the road. About the kind of man he really is. We drove in silence for a while after that. I didn't know if I wanted to push her for more. My entire life, I had painted my dad as my rock, my protector. Even if he wasn't perfect, he was all I had. Now this woman was telling me there was more beneath the surface, something dark. Her house was small but welcoming, tucked into a quiet neighborhood lined with oak trees. The porch had potted plants and a wind chime that tinkled softly in the breeze. Inside, it smelled of cinnamon and coffee, like a place where love actually lived. Evelyn set my bag down and motioned for me to sit at the kitchen table. She poured me a glass of water before sitting across from me. Rose, she began carefully, your father and I grew up in a very strict home. After our mom died, our dad, your grandfather, changed. He became controlling, even cruel. I left as soon as I could. Your father, he stayed. He absorbed more of our father's ways than he'd ever admit. When I tried to protect him back then, he pushed me away. And when you were born, well, I wanted to be in your life. But he cut me off completely. I gripped the glass, my fingers trembling. So, you're saying Dad's like Grandpa? Her eyes were filled with a sadness that made me want to cry again. Not exactly. But he's a man who wants control. When you resisted his wife, that challenged him. And instead of loving you through it, he tried to force your obedience. The words hit me hard because they were true. Laura had always been the one calling the shots lately, and Dad never told her no. And when I refused to fall in line, he left me at the station without a second thought. I swallowed hard. What do I do now? Evelyn reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. You stay here. You let me help you. And Rose. I think it's time we show the world who your father really is. Her words made something stir inside me, fear, yes, but also a flicker of strength. For the first time, I wasn't just abandoned. I was being offered a chance to fight back. The first night at Evelyn's house was strange. I lay awake in the small guest room she had prepared for me, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. It wasn't the sound that kept me awake, it was the whirlwind of emotions. Anger, hurt, confusion, but also, relief. Relief that I wasn't still standing at that station, alone. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and pancakes. For the first time in a long time, someone had made breakfast just for me. Evelyn greeted me with a smile, sliding a plate onto the table. You look like you didn't sleep much, she said softly. I kept thinking about him, I admitted. How he could just leave me like that. I keep waiting for him to call. But he hasn't. Her eyes darkened. Don't expect him to. If he's anything like he was when I last knew him, he's probably convincing himself he did the right thing. That cut deep, but it made sense. My father had always been stubborn, always finding a way to twist things so he was never the bad guy. After breakfast, Evelyn sat me down with a folder she pulled from a cabinet. Inside were documents, old photographs, and even a few letters. "I want you to see this," she said. "Your father has a history, things you've never been told. He's made mistakes, some serious. And I've been keeping records, just in case something like this happened." I scanned the papers, my heart pounding. There were old reports of violent arguments between my father and Evelyn when they were young, police notes about disturbances at their childhood home, even a restraining order Evelyn had once filed when she tried to intervene in his life years later. It was like watching the picture of the man I thought I knew shatter into pieces. Evelyn leaned forward. "I don't show you this to hurt you. I show you this because you deserve the truth. And because if he thinks he can abandon you and walk away, he's wrong. We have a chance to hold him accountable." I swallowed, my hands trembling as I held one of the reports. "Accountable how?" Evelyn's eyes hardened. "The police can help. And so can I. But first, we need to build a case. We need to show that what he did to you wasn't just cruel, it was neglect. Abandoning your own child at a train station? That's not something he can just walk away from." The word police made my stomach flip. It felt heavy, too big, like stepping into a world I didn't belong in. But then I remembered standing on that platform with tears on my face, watching his car disappear. I remembered how small I felt, how unwanted. And something inside me snapped. "You're right," I said firmly. "If he didn't want me, then fine. But he doesn't get to destroy me. I want to do this. I want to fight back." Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest smile, one of pride mixed with sadness. "Good. Then we'll start today." By Monday morning, Evelyn had convinced me it was time to go to the police. My stomach was in knots the whole drive there. I kept replaying the moment at the train station over and over again, my dad's words, the look on his face, the way he drove away without hesitation. We walked into the station, the cool blast of air conditioning hitting my skin. The place smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, and the sound of phones ringing and keyboards clicking filled the air. Evelyn walked with confidence, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, guiding me forward. A uniformed officer looked up from the front desk. "How can I help you?" he asked. Evelyn gave me a reassuring nod, and I stepped forward, my voice trembling. "I need to report something. My father abandoned me at the train station 2 days ago. I'm only 18. The officer raised his brows, glancing at Evelyn for confirmation. She stepped in smoothly. "She's telling the truth. I'm her aunt. I found her crying at the station. Her father left her there with her belongings and never came back." The officer's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. He motioned for us to follow him into a smaller room where we could sit. Soon, a detective came in, a woman with sharp eyes but a kind voice. She asked me to tell her everything. From the moment we got in the car to the second his taillights vanished, I laid it all out, my voice breaking only once. Evelyn squeezed my hand under the table each time I faltered. The detective scribbled notes, nodding. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Rose, what your father did could be considered neglect, possibly even abandonment. It's serious. Do you want to pursue charges?" My chest tightened. It was one thing to tell the story, another to make it official. I thought about the man who used to hold my hand when I crossed the street, who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to say I was his whole world. Then I thought about him leaving me like I was nothing. I lifted my chin. "Yes. I want to." The detective gave a firm nod. "All right. We'll start by documenting everything. We'll also need to speak with your father." That last part sent a chill down my spine. Evelyn must have sensed it because she leaned in, whispering, "Don't worry. You won't have to face him alone. I promise." As we left the station, I felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I had finally spoken up. Heavier because now there was no going back. For the first time, the balance of power was shifting. My father wasn't the one in control anymore. And he had no idea what was waiting for him when he came back. By Wednesday evening, the call came in. Evelyn was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then looked at me with steady eyes. "It's the detective," she said, answering. I watched her expression tighten as she listened, nodding slowly. Then she hung up and turned to me. "They reached him. Your father's back in town." The words made my stomach flip. My heart pounded against my ribs, and my palms grew damp. I wasn't ready to face him, not yet. But the detective had said it had to happen sooner or later. Later that night, Evelyn drove us to her house. We pulled into the driveway just as the sun dipped below the horizon. I hadn't been back since that awful day at the train station, and seeing the street again brought a flood of memories. 2 police cruisers were parked out front, lights flashing red and blue against the siding. My father's car sat in the driveway, and through the living room window, I could see his shadow pacing back and forth. My chest tightened as we walked up to the house. An officer stopped us at the porch. "You're the daughter?" he asked. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. "Don't worry. You're safe. We're just here to mediate while the detective questions him," the officer assured me. Inside, the air was thick with tension. My father turned the second I entered. His face was red, his eyes wide. "Rose," he barked, his voice sharp. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea what you've put me through?" The words hit me like a slap. What I put him through? My chest burned with anger, but Evelyn squeezed my shoulder, grounding me. The detective stepped in, her tone firm. "Mr. Daniels, your daughter has filed a report against you for abandonment. We need to discuss what happened at the train station." My father's jaw dropped. "Abandonment? Are you kidding me?" "She refused to come with me and my wife. I was teaching her a lesson." The detective's eyes narrowed. Leaving an 18-year-old alone at a public train station with no plan and no guardian is not a lesson. It's neglect. Do you understand the seriousness of that? He opened his mouth to argue, but for the first time, I saw something flicker across his face, doubt. He wasn't in charge here. The police were. I stood frozen, my heart racing, watching the man I once thought invincible squirm under someone else's authority. That night, he didn't walk away untouched. The detective warned him that a formal investigation was underway and that his choices could have legal consequences. He tried to glare at me as they escorted him out of the room, but his look didn't carry the same weight anymore. Not when the police were on my side. For the first time in years, I wasn't the powerless one. That night, after the police left and the house went quiet, I sat at Evelyn's kitchen table with a mug of tea in my hands. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving me shaky and drained. Evelyn sat across from me, her expression calm but unreadable. "Rose," she said softly, "you did something very brave tonight. Most kids would have gone back with him, out of fear or guilt. But you stood your ground." I stared into my tea. "I don't feel brave. I just feel angry. Like all these years I thought he loved me, and now it feels like I was just a burden." Evelyn reached across the table, resting her hand on mine. "That anger you feel? Don't push it away. Use it. Channel it into something that makes you stronger." Her words echoed in my head long after I went to bed. I lay there in the dark, replaying every memory of Laura belittling me, of Dad taking her side, of the way he abandoned me like I meant nothing. Each memory added fuel to a fire I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. The next morning, Evelyn had a plan. She pulled out a binder, yes, an actual binder, full of notes, dates, and even articles she had saved about my dad. "I'd been documenting things for years," she explained. "Your father has a pattern. Failed jobs, debts he never paid back, fights that nearly got him arrested. He's not the man you thought he was, Rose. And if he tries to take this further, we can use every bit of this against him. I flipped through the binder, my hands trembling. Each page felt like another crack in the image of the father I thought I knew. Why didn't you ever tell me all this before? I asked. Because I didn't want to take away the only parent you had, she admitted. But now he's taken himself out of your life. And I won't let him hurt you anymore. I swallowed hard. So what do we do? Evelyn leaned in, her eyes sharp. We make sure he's held accountable. We make sure the truth about him comes out. And if he tries to fight us? We hit him harder. With the law, with evidence, with everything he's tried to bury. Something shifted inside me then. For years, I'd been silent, letting him and Laura control the narrative, making me feel small. But now I had someone in my corner who actually believed in me. I nodded, my jaw tightening. Okay. Let's do it. Evelyn's lips curved into a smile, not triumphant but determined. That's my girl. And just like that, revenge stopped being just a thought in the back of my mind. It became a mission. The next week was a blur of digging through the past. Evelyn and I spent hours at her kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of papers, old photographs, and her thick binder of notes. I felt like we were detectives in our own case, except the man we were investigating was my father. Evelyn was methodical. She showed me how to organize everything, timelines of his jobs, records of financial trouble, arguments with neighbors, even receipts from places he said he'd never been. The key, she explained, is to build a pattern. A story that shows the truth of who he really is. That way, when the time comes, the police, or a judge, won't see this as just one mistake. They'll see him for the man he's always been. At first, it was overwhelming. Part of me still wanted to believe my dad was the man who once read me bedtime stories and taught me how to drive. But the more I saw, the harder it was to deny. He hadn't just changed overnight. He'd been like this all along, and I was only now seeing it clearly. One night, while Evelyn was sorting documents, I scrolled through my phone and found old text messages from him. Some were caring, but others were manipulative, guilt trips about how I owed him respect, or how I needed to stop being difficult with Laura. When I showed them to Evelyn, she nodded. Good. Screenshot all of those. They'll help show a pattern of emotional manipulation. Piece by piece, we were building a case, not just for the police, but for me. Each file, each message, was like reclaiming a piece of my voice. A few days later, Evelyn suggested we take the next step, talking to people who knew him. Your father leaves a trail, Rose, she said. Neighbors, co-workers, even friends he's burned over the years. If we can get statements, it'll make our case stronger. So we started calling. Some people hung up immediately when they heard his name. Others were more than willing to talk, sharing stories of debt, lies, and temper outbursts. Every word made my chest tighten, but also strengthened my resolve. Late one night, after hours of work, I sat back in my chair, staring at the mountain of evidence we had collected. Do you think this will be enough? I asked. Evelyn met my eyes, her expression steady. It's more than enough. And soon, Rose, he won't be able to hide behind his lies anymore. He's going to learn what it feels like to lose control. Her words settled deep inside me. For years, I had been silent while he and Laura had the power. But now? Now the power was shifting. And for the first time, I felt ready for whatever came next. It was a Thursday evening when my phone lit up with his name. For days, I had half expected it, but seeing Dad flash across the screen still made my stomach lurch. My hand hovered over the phone, torn between rejecting the call and answering it. Evelyn glanced up from the folder she was organizing. You don't have to pick it up, Rose. Not if you're not ready. But something inside me told me I had to. I needed to hear his voice, needed to face him. With a shaky breath, I swiped to answer. Hello? Rose. His voice burst through the line, sharp and full of false relief. Finally. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? Running off like that. I cut him off. Running off? You left me at the train station, Dad. With nothing. You didn't come back. There was silence on his end, then a scoff. Don't twist this around. You made me choose between you and my wife. I wasn't going to play your childish games. I thought maybe a few days alone would make you realize how much you need me. I clenched my teeth, anger bubbling hot in my chest. I don't need you. Not if this is who you are. You don't get to abandon me and then act like I'm the one who left. His tone hardened. You're being dramatic. Evelyn's filling your head with nonsense, isn't she? I told you years ago she wasn't to be trusted. She's always hated me. I looked over at Evelyn. She gave me a small nod, encouraging me to keep going. No, Dad, I said firmly. She didn't fill my head with anything. You did. Every time you chose Laura over me. Every time you made me feel small. And especially the day you left me standing on that platform like I didn't matter. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. Rose, I'm your father. You can't just turn against me. You're making a mistake. For the first time, I felt no fear. Just clarity. The mistake was thinking you'd ever put me first. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hands were trembling, but not from weakness. From release. For the first time, I had stood up to him without backing down. The phone buzzed again almost immediately, but I let it ring. This time, I didn't owe him an answer. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her eyes shining with pride. That, Rose, was the beginning of your freedom. And she was right. The fear I had carried for years was finally cracking apart. My father's words no longer held me prisoner. 2 days after I hung up on my father, Evelyn and I walked back into the police station with a box full of evidence. It felt heavier than it really was, not because of the weight but because of what it meant. Inside that box was the story of my father, the side of him I had never wanted to believe in but now couldn't deny. The detective who had helped me before met us in a small conference room. She looked at the box, then at me. Is this everything you've been gathering? I nodded. It's all the proof I have of what he's done, not just to me, but to others too. He left me at the train station, but it wasn't the first time he's hurt people. This shows the pattern. Evelyn slid the binder across the table. You'll find police reports, financial records, witness statements, even messages he sent Rose. It's more than enough to paint the picture. The detective started flipping through the pages, her expression tightening with each turn. Finally, she set the binder down and looked at me. Rose, what you've done here is important. Your father's behavior at the train station alone is enough to warrant action, but this? She tapped the binder. This gives us grounds to push further. If he tries to fight back, we can show a history of neglect and reckless behavior. Hearing her say it out loud made my chest tighten. Part of me still couldn't believe I was here, building a case against my own father. But another part of me, the stronger part, knew I had no choice. He'd crossed a line, and I couldn't let him keep walking away unscathed. The detective continued, We'll start by filing a formal neglect complaint. It may not lead to jail time right away, but it could impact his record, his finances, even his ability to keep certain jobs. And if he tries to challenge custody of you. I'm 18, I cut in quickly. He doesn't have custody anymore. She nodded. Exactly. Which means you're free to choose where you live. And if he tries to manipulate or harass you further, we can take legal measures. As we left the station that afternoon, I felt lighter. Not because the fight was over, but because it was finally official. The system wasn't just listening, it was moving. Evelyn smiled at me as we walked to the car. You see, Rose? The man who thought he could control everything is finally losing his grip. And soon, he'll realize he underestimated you. Her words lit a fire inside me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a powerless daughter caught in her father's shadow. I felt like someone standing on her own. And I wasn't done yet. It didn't take long for my father to find out the case against him was real. A week later, he showed up at Evelyn's house unannounced. I was sitting on the porch swing, reading, when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. My chest tightened the moment I saw his car. He got out fast, slamming the door behind him. His face was flushed, his steps heavy, and for a second I thought he might charge right up to me. But the sight of Evelyn coming to stand at the door froze him in his tracks. "Rose," he said, his voice sharp and edged with desperation. "What the hell are you doing? The police came to my house. They're saying I abandoned you. Do you know what that looks like? Do you know what you've done to me?" I stood slowly, gripping the porch railing to steady myself. "No, Dad. Do you know what you did to me? You left me there. Alone. Like I didn't matter." He shook his head violently. "That's not how it happened. You're twisting things, just like Evelyn always does. She's poisoning you against me. You're my daughter, Rose. You're supposed to stand by me." Evelyn's voice cut in, firm and calm. "She doesn't have to stand by someone who abandons her. She owes you nothing." His eyes darted between us, and I saw it, panic. Not anger, not authority, but fear. For once, he wasn't in control. He tried again, softening his tone. "Rose, sweetheart, think about what you're doing. These people don't care about you like I do. This is family. We work things out. You don't drag your father through the mud." Something inside me hardened. "You stopped being my family the moment you drove away." His jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he might explode. Instead, he pointed a finger at Evelyn. "This isn't over. You think you've won, but you'll see. She'll come back to me. She always does." I didn't flinch this time. "No. I won't." With that, he stormed back to his car, tires screeching as he sped off. My knees went weak, but Evelyn steadied me. "You see him for who he really is now," she said quietly. And I did. For the first time, I wasn't blinded by old memories of who I wanted him to be. I saw the man he truly was, desperate, manipulative, and afraid of losing the control he'd held over me for so long. But the more he fought back, the stronger I felt. Because now, he wasn't just battling me. He was battling the truth. The morning after my father's outburst at Evelyn's house, we met again with the detective. She was calm but direct, laying out the next steps like pieces on a chessboard. "Given the evidence you've provided, Rose," she said, "we're moving forward with formal charges of neglect. Your father will have the right to defend himself, and this could very well end up in court." The word court made my chest tighten. I'd never even been inside a courtroom, and the thought of sitting across from my father while strangers judged our family felt impossible. But Evelyn's hand on my arm grounded me. "We'll be ready," she told the detective. Back at home, Evelyn wasted no time. She called an attorney she trusted, a woman named Karen who specialized in family law. When Karen arrived that evening, she sat with us at the kitchen table, spreading out a notepad and listening carefully to everything. "Your father's defense will be predictable," Karen explained. "He'll say you're 18, an adult who could make her own choices. He'll frame what happened as a misunderstanding or a lesson. That's why we have to focus on the evidence that shows a pattern: emotional manipulation, neglect, financial irresponsibility, and now this incident at the train station. It paints the full picture." I nodded, clutching the edge of my chair. "I just don't want him to get away with it. Not again." Karen leaned forward, her voice steady. "He won't. But Rose, you need to prepare yourself. He's going to fight hard. Men like your father don't like losing control." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining myself sitting in court, his eyes burning into me as I told the truth. The thought made me nervous, but it also made me stronger. Over the next week, Evelyn and I doubled down. We gathered witness statements from neighbors, co-workers, and even one of his old bosses who said he had a temper problem. We printed text messages, highlighted financial records, and organized everything into neat folders. For the first time, I felt like we weren't just reacting, we were building something. A wall of truth he couldn't climb over. One night, as Evelyn and I sat surrounded by papers, she looked at me with pride. "Rose, you're not that girl who cried at the train station anymore. You're standing up for yourself. And when this is over, he won't recognize the person you've become." I swallowed hard, the fire in my chest stronger than ever. Good. I don't want him to. Because this wasn't just about punishment anymore. It was about reclaiming everything he'd taken from me. And I was ready. The first day in court felt like stepping into another world. The air inside the courthouse was cold, the walls an unforgiving shade of gray. I sat at the table beside Evelyn and our attorney, Karen, trying to steady my breathing. My palms were sweaty, and my heart hammered in my chest so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Then the door opened, and he walked in. My father. He wore a suit that looked a size too tight, his hair combed back like he was trying to play the part of a respectable man. But his eyes, those same eyes that used to look at me with warmth, now held nothing but defiance. He glanced at me briefly, his jaw tightening, then looked away as if I were a stranger. "Don't let him shake you," Evelyn whispered, leaning close. "You have the truth. That's all that matters." When the judge entered and the session began, Karen stood to speak on my behalf. Her voice was firm, professional, but full of the conviction I sometimes doubted in myself. She laid out the events of that day at the train station, backed by the stack of evidence we had prepared. She didn't just describe what happened, she showed the pattern, piece by piece. When it was his turn, my father's lawyer tried to twist everything. He painted me as a stubborn teenager who didn't like her stepmother, suggested I had overreacted, and claimed my father had only been trying to teach me responsibility. But then the judge asked me to speak. I stood, my legs shaking, and walked to the witness stand. The courtroom felt too big, the silence pressing down on me. My father's eyes burned into me as I took a deep breath. "I loved my dad," I began, my voice trembling. "For years, he was my whole world. But when he married Laura, things changed. He stopped listening to me. He stopped caring how I felt. And then, he left me. At the train station. Alone. He didn't come back." I paused, swallowing hard as tears threatened to rise. But I didn't let them fall. Not this time. That wasn't a lesson. That wasn't love. That was abandonment. And I need this court to understand that I'm not making this up. I lived it. The room was silent. For once, my father had no quick comeback, no glare strong enough to make me falter. He shifted in his seat, his face tight with anger, but the power he used to hold over me was gone. When I stepped down, Evelyn squeezed my hand. "You were perfect," she whispered. For the first time in my life, I felt like my voice mattered. Like he couldn't silence me anymore. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The second day in court was worse for him. I could see it the moment he took the stand. His confidence from the first day was gone, replaced with a jittery kind of defensiveness. He kept straightening his tie, shifting in his chair, avoiding the judge's eyes. His lawyer started with rehearsed questions, painting him as a devoted father who had made a mistake in judgment. My father nodded along, speaking with forced calm. "I would never abandon my daughter. I just wanted her to understand that she couldn't refuse to come with me and my wife. I left her at the station for a short time, planning to come back." Karen stood, her expression sharp. "Mr. Daniels, how long did you leave her at the station?" He hesitated, then muttered, "A few hours." Karen raised an eyebrow. "A few hours? According to records and testimony, you didn't return until days later. Isn't that correct?" My father's face reddened. I was busy. Busy, Karen repeated, letting the word hang in the air. Busy while your 18-year-old daughter sat alone at a train station with no way home, no food, no support? He shifted uncomfortably. She's legally an adult. She could have handled herself. The judge's expression tightened, and I saw a flicker of doubt ripple across the room. Karen pressed harder. So you admit you prioritized your own life, and your new wife, over your daughter's safety. And this wasn't the first time, was it? We have multiple witness statements, including one from your former employer, who described your temper and neglectful behavior. Do you deny this? My father's jaw clenched. People lie. Karen pulled out a folder. Then perhaps these text messages will refresh your memory. She read aloud one of the messages he had sent me. If you don't stop acting like a child, you'll find out how easy it is for me to walk away. Gasps echoed softly in the courtroom. My father's face paled. He looked at me then, as if daring me to look away. But I didn't. I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. For once, he was the one shrinking under my gaze. By the time the questioning ended, his mask had cracked. The confident, controlling man I had grown up with was gone. In his place sat someone exposed, angry, desperate, and unraveling. When we left the courthouse that afternoon, Evelyn slipped her arm through mine. He's losing, Rose. He can't hide anymore. The truth is catching up with him. And for the first time, I truly believed her. The final day in court felt different. The air was heavy, tense, like everyone knew something irreversible was about to happen. I sat beside Evelyn, my hands clasped in my lap, while Karen organized the last of our documents. My father sat across the room, his face tight, his eyes dark with resentment. He looked smaller somehow, as though the weeks of questioning and evidence had chipped away at the armor he always wore. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. She reviewed the files one last time, her expression unreadable. My chest tightened as I waited, every muscle in my body bracing for the words that would decide everything. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, the judge began, her voice steady. This court finds that Mr. Daniels displayed a consistent pattern of neglectful and manipulative behavior toward his daughter, culminating in the incident at the train station. While Ms. Daniels is legally an adult, the court recognizes that abandonment of this nature is serious and cannot be ignored. My father shifted in his seat, his lawyer whispering frantically to him, but the judge continued. Mr. Daniels, you will face mandatory counseling and community service, along with restrictions that limit your direct contact with your daughter unless she explicitly chooses otherwise. Furthermore, financial restitution is ordered for the hardship you caused. Her gavel came down with a sharp crack. It was over. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. My father's face flushed with rage, his mouth opening as if he wanted to shout, but the bailiff's warning glance kept him silent. Evelyn squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. When we walked out of that courtroom into the sunlight, it felt like I was breathing freely for the first time in years. I had spoken my truth, and for once, someone had listened. Someone had believed me. Evelyn wrapped her arm around my shoulders. You did it, Rose. You didn't just survive him, you beat him. I nodded, tears filling my eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. They were from relief. From pride. From finally being free. That night, as we sat on Evelyn's porch, the crickets chirping in the distance, I thought about the girl I had been at the train station. The girl who stood there with her bag, crying, feeling abandoned and invisible. That girl was gone. Now, I was someone stronger. Someone who had faced her worst fear and walked away with her head held high. And as I leaned against Evelyn, I knew one thing for certain, my father had tried to break me. But instead, he had built the fire that made me unshakable. I had my revenge, not through anger or violence, but by proving I didn't need him. I had won.